Hey guys, it's Kay from KS Anonymous, and I am back today with another episode of r/legal advice. So today I wanted to pick a story or legal advice issue that had an update because last time a lot of you were kind of not enjoying being left hanging with the issue, so I found one with an update, so here we go. Neighbor's child has disabilities and won't stop climbing the fence, entering my house, and freeing my dogs. For the past 7 months after moving into my new house with my daughter and dogs, the neighbor's child, who's 15 or 16 and has pretty severe Down syndrome, has increasingly been entering my property and home. At first, I just talked to the neighbors, and they were at first really sorry and vowed to monitor her more while she's in their backyard. However, after a few months, they just genuinely do not care anymore and brush it off. I've installed security cameras in the backyard and front yard purely for my own safety insurance-wise because we do have a pool. She will climb the fence into my yard, 6-foot wooden privacy fence, with a ladder from their shed and let my dogs out. I fixed her letting my dogs free, as she says, by using chains and padlocks on the 2 gates. Before this became a common occurrence, she would even let the dogs out of the house and then free them. Numerous times, if my garage door is open, she will leave their backyard and just walk into my house to free my dogs. I don't know what the purpose is other than it's something she just has to do for whatever reason. When she climbs into the backyard, sometimes when I'm not even home, and she cannot get back out, she begins screaming and crying and just shuts down. Before I started chaining and locking my gates because of her releasing my dogs, her parents would just walk in and get her and leave. Now, since I've chained it, they start a huge fit about me having her locked in my backyard, and they have to climb the fence, bring the ladder over, and carry her back over. Somehow, this is my fault? Now, I'm not really blaming her because she mentally doesn't know any better. She has some very severe issues, and she's dang lucky my dogs are super nice. Purebred German Shepherd, an English Bulldog, and a mixed Shepherd and Bulldog. I just honestly worry about her safety in the backyard, climbing fences, and her seemingly not being watched as she needs to be. I have a pool, and if she falls in when I'm not home, she could very well drown. That's why I installed security cameras to cover my own rear if that ever happens. I truly hope it never does, but it seems her parents just put her in the backyard and that's it. I've called the local Child and Family Services Office, CPS, several times in the past 2 months to report it because I feel she is at risk with her parents' inattentiveness and their seemingly not caring attitude of her just going into people's yards, garages, houses, etc. I have a full garage of power tools, table saws, etc., and I've now had to resort to flipping the breaker off when I open the doors out of fear she may severely injure herself. I feel like I've done everything I can. Talked to the parents numerous times, called Child and Family Services, installed cameras, locked my gates further. I just have no idea what to do now. I've debated calling the police when she enters, but I don't know how that will escalate. As someone who had exactly this happen, I can tell you that the first time something serious happens to her, you are going to be liable and they are going to come after you. For 2 years, I dealt with my neighbor's kid coming over, opening my gate, and doing whatever she pleased. Let my last dog out to the point I had to keep him inside and learn crate training. When I put a lock on the gate, she would climb the fence and fall over the side. This is where she got hurt one time, and the parents tried to sue me for her broken arm and the piece of lattice that stabbed through her arm. I had multiple calls to police, videos, and a declaration that stated the family was not allowed on my property, restraining order, and I had my insurance involved with the whole thing in case something did happen. They didn't have a case in the long run, and although they tried to plaster me as an a-hole neighbor with no compassion for their autistic kid, once it happened again where another neighbor's dog ended up being killed from running into the street, the whole neighborhood got the same thing I have. Get a restraining order, get a property attorney involved, and call the cops. Her parents obviously don't give a crap about your property. So get your ducks in a row and get records going. Any and all videos are helpful. Without all that, I would have owed to this day probably. Not worth it. Not a lawyer. My son just went through an almost identical situation. Neighbor's 16-year-old autistic kid kept coming into their property where they have a pool and protective dogs. They wouldn't bite, they just bark and scare the kid half to death. He always wanted to pet the dogs. Son explained to him and his parents that he needs to knock on the front door when he wants to pet them so the owners can let the dogs know it's not an intruder. He warned them the kid continues to trespass, they did nothing. He called the police when the kid continued to trespass. He installed security cameras. 3 days after installing them, the kid falls while climbing his fence and the parents try to sue him. Police reports helped kill the case even faster than the footage. Best of luck to you. I work for DCS. I don't know what state you're in, but in my state, you would need to call and report it every time it happens. Trust me, this warrants an assessment from someone from the agency to determine if the family needs to be investigated or provided services. Just because they come to an assessment doesn't necessarily mean they are starting a case nor taking the child, so don't feel bad. We have cases called family evaluations where we do not open a traditional case. Rather, we assist the families in getting appropriate community services and resources to help solve issues like this. I would tell the hotline operator who you are, your address, what has occurred, how many times, and mention having videos of it happening. The assessment worker should come speak with you. Again, this doesn't make you a bad person for reporting, just a responsible individual. Her being unsupervised to the point where she can access dangerous environments like this is a hazardous situation. If she were to drown, the parents would be put in jail for neglect leading to a fatality. If this is all due to her parents' inattentiveness, then they need to have a case opened to make them understand the gravity of the situation, or if she is just too much for them to handle, they need to be connected with the appropriate services. At this point, you need to call the police. This is a dangerous situation for her, and what she is doing is a crime. Her condition is not your responsibility. You have been more than nice about the entire situation. Even with your camera, if she hurts herself or even worse, drowns in your pool, you can be held liable, especially if you are in California. Especially held liable because it is demonstrated that OP knew she was coming into the yard and didn't properly secure the pool. It's an attractive nuisance. I'm sad about this update for the kid. I took the majority of the given advice and called the police non-emergency number and asked for an officer to come out because I had questions about an issue I'm having and briefly explained it. Officer shows up, I invite him in and explain the whole situation. He isn't really sure what to do about it right now, so he asks for a supervisor to come to his position. Supervisor shows up and I go over the whole thing again. We go upstairs to my computer where I have all the videos clipped and saved. 9 times of her entering the backyard and 4 of her entering the house through the garage. We watched each one and he gets on his cell phone and goes back to his car. A few minutes later, he comes back with 3 flash drives and asks me to copy the videos over to the drive and had me fill out a piece of paper stating what I put on the drive and then signed it. I repeated it all 3 times. About 45 minutes later, after we have been talking and he's been on and off his cell phone the entire time, 2 CPS workers show up and review the videos again and take a complete statement from me going back to the first time it happened. This took about 2 hours because they wanted it to be precise and as accurate as I remember it, and left out anything I wasn't 100% sure on. The officers and CPS workers head next door to talk to the parents. Parents apparently shut the door in their faces and said they didn't want to talk, but because of my statement and the videos of her climbing over, getting stuck, having to be carried over the times I'm at work or gone, and just entering the house, they had probable cause to enter the home anyways. After they were inside their house for about 10 to 15 minutes, another cop car shows up, followed by another a few minutes later. I'm in my garage, so I don't know exactly what happened inside, but after more officers showed up, the father was put in the back of a car and the daughter was put into the CPS worker's van, and they left. The father was driven away about 10 minutes after that, and then about an hour later, the mother is also put into the back of a car and they drive away. I talked to the initial officer that showed up and asked for a supervisor, and he tells me they found drugs, pills not in prescription bottles, not their prescriptions, and that the home was just not being taken care of inside and definitely not a safe environment for a child. Said they found drugs not secured and in areas the child had access to them. I haven't seen them since the day after the post. I feel bad for the kid being in that situation and me being a neighbor not even knowing and my not wanting to call the cops. I didn't think it was anything like they found. I just figured it is really tough raising a kid, and on top of that, severe mental disabilities, and it's even tougher. I should have called them earlier once the CPS reports I was doing over the phone didn't ever do anything. That's just honestly really heartbreaking. A lot of special needs children don't get the care that they need because it's just difficult, and not a lot of parents rise up to that task, if that makes sense. There's so many parents in the world that don't care much for their children, but I guess it's easier to see when that child is special needs, and that child had access to that ladder, that they got basically mad that they couldn't just open the gate and retrieve their child who was using the gate to come into someone else's yard, that they weren't taking care of their home, probably weren't taking care of the child. It's just really heartbreaking. I'm glad that this person got on here and asked, and they were able to find out what was really going on in that home, and hopefully the situation is better for the child. I really hope that's the case. I hope that, things didn't get worse, because I know the system isn't always that great, but there you go. That was today's r/legal advice. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Do you like hearing the conclusion or the update? Or are you okay with open-ended ones? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop a like, and I will talk to you in my next video. Bye!